Your Highness, Sayyid Dr. Adham bin Turki Al Saeed, the patron of the conference, Your Excellency, Dr. Bakhit bin Ahmed Al Mahri, the Undersecretary of the Ministry of Higher Education, Scientific Research and Innovation for Higher Education, Dr. Musa bin Abdullah Al Kindi, Dean of Modern College of Business and Science, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the International Conference on Sustainable Practices in Business and Technology, the ICSPBT, organized by the Modern College of Business and Science, Oman, in collaboration with the EuroMid Academy of Business and Technology, Turkey. Let us begin this momentous occasion with a recitation of verses from the Holy Quran.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم مثل الذين اتخذوا من دون الله أولياء كمثل العنكبوت اتخذت بيتا وإن أوهن البيوت لبيت العنكبوت لو كانوا يعلمون إن الله يعلم ما يدعون من دونه من شيء وهو العزيز الحكيم وتلك الأمثال نضربها للناس وما يعقلها إلا العالمون خلق الله السماوات والأرض بالحق إن في ذلك لآية للمؤمنين أتل ما أوحي إليك من الكتاب وأقم الصلاة إن الصلاة تنهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون.
Sadaqallahu al-Azim. It is an honor to have you all here, both in person and online, as we embark on this exciting hybrid event spread over December 11th and 12th of 2024. My name is Al-Harith Al-Abd Salam, and I am joined by my co-host, Ms. Amira Al-Balghoni. Over to you, Ms. Amira.
Thank you, Harith. Good morning, everyone, and welcome once again to this exciting day. Before we move on to our program, allow us to address a couple of housekeeping rules. First, please note that there are no fire drills scheduled for today. And therefore, if you do hear the fire alarm, we request you kindly raise from your seats and exit the hall to your left in a calm manner. And through the college's main entrance, which will be right ahead of you, after which you will be guided by our conference organizers to the dedicated assembly points. Second, kindly note that the restrooms are located on this floor in the academy, our corporate training arm, which is located through the cafeteria and then to your left. You can also access restrooms on the left of the reception desk as you exit this hall. Once again, our conference organizers will be happy to guide you should you require their assistance. And now we will move on to a short introductory video of MCBS.
In the heart of Oman, where ancient traditions meet modern aspirations, stands the Modern College of Business and Science, a beacon of knowledge and innovation since its inception in 1996. Our state-of-the-art campus reflects our commitment to excellence. From cutting-edge digital libraries to interactive classrooms, every corner of MCBS is designed to inspire and innovate.
college has undergone amazing changes over the years, and particularly within the last year. We have a colorful campus that includes a set of dynamic centers, including a sustainable center, innovation center, an entrepreneurship hub, a recreational center, as well as a dining hall.
Guided by a faculty of industry leaders and academic experts, our students receive unparalleled mentorship and insight, preparing them to become the business pioneers of tomorrow. MCBS prides itself on a diverse student body, bringing together individuals from various cultural and professional backgrounds. This diversity enriches the learning experience, fostering global perspectives and innovative thinking.
الكلية الحديثة للتجارة والعلوم مستمرة في ريادتها في مجال التعليم والتعلم من خلال طرح برامج أكاديمية متميزة بمختلف المستويات، بدءاً من الدبلوم والبكالوريوس والماجستير وكذلك الدكتوراه، وتحقق إنجازات طيبة في مجال البحث العلمي والابتكار وريادة الأعمال، وتعزز علاقتها مع المؤسسات المحلية والدولية.
Join us at the Modern College of Business and Science, where your journey to becoming a future leader begins against the backdrop of Oman's rich traditions and bright future.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to invite Dr. Musa Al-Kindi, the Dean of the Modern College of Business and Science, to deliver his opening remarks. Please join me welcoming Dr. Musa Al-Kindi.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Your Highness, Sayyid Dr. Adham bin Turki Al Saeed, CEO and co-founder of the firm for business and economic consulting, our guest of honor and keynote speaker, Engineer Saeed Salim Al-Shamfari, CEO of the Oman Convention and Exhibition Center, our second keynote speaker, Your Excellency Dr. Bakhit bin Ahmed Al-Mahri, the Undersecretary of the Ministry of Higher Education, Scientific Research and Innovation for Higher Education, our distinguished guests, invitees, faculty members, and staff. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It is my great honor to warmly welcome you to the International Conference on Sustainable Practices in Business and Technology, organized by the Modern College of Business and Science in collaboration with the EuroMid Academy for Business and Technology. We are thrilled to have such a distinguished group of participants gathered here today. Today we stand at a critical intersection of technology, business, and sustainability, a crossroad that will define our collective future. The International Conference on Sustainable Practices in Business and Technology is not just an event. With more than 400 accepted papers from 29 countries, it is a global dialogue about reimagining our approach to economic progress and environmental stewardship. The ideas and collaborations that emerge from this gathering will help shape the next phase of sustainable growth in our industries and societies. At MCBS, and in adherence to the theme of the conference, we believe every small action contributes to a larger impact. After the event, we will publish a sustainability report and seek official carbon neutral certification, inshallah. At MCBS, let this event inspire us all to make sustainability a shared priority and drive meaningful change in business, technology, and beyond. The Modern College of Business and Science is proud to be your platform for the innovation. We are committed to nurturing ideas that can transform challenges into opportunities and vision into reality. Once again, we extend our heartfelt appreciation and gratitude to all the distinguished speakers, participants, and innovators who have contributed to this conference. Your dedication to the advancement of knowledge, sustainable practices, and innovation is truly commendable. Last but not least, a word of appreciation and recognition to the organizing and steering committees and many other committees, Professor Rami Uwais, Dr. Hudayfa Shakir, Dr. Fadi Abdul Fattah, Dr. Hisham Madhi, and the many senior and junior members of MCBS who worked tirelessly day and night to make this conference happen. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. We pray to the most gracious Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the success in our efforts to serve the development of our nation under the wise leadership of His Majesty Sultan Haytham bin Tariq. May Allah protect him. May peace, blessing, and mercy of Allah be upon you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Thank you, Dr. Musa, for your inspiring words. Next, we have the honor of hearing from our patron, His Highness Sayyid Dr. Adham bin Turki Al Saeed. His Highness is an assistant professor of economics at the College of Economics and Political Science in Sultan Qaboos University. He has been awarded his master's degree from New York University and his PhD from the University of Western Australia. His area of expertise include the Omani economy, macroeconomic policies, and economic development. He is a founding partner of the firm for Business and Economic Consulting. The firm provides business advisory and research consulting to a wide range of stakeholders. He served as a member of Sharia Supervisory Board in Muslim Islamic Banking. He has recently been appointed chair of the advisory committee at the Center for Competition Protection and Monopoly Prevention. He is also a member of the Board of Authority of Public Services Regulation. Recently, he has been appointed Chair Economic Committee, Oman Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He contributes to professional and policy advisory for both private and public sector entities. His professional contributions include assessment of Oman's macroeconomic development and public policies, labor market assessment, mapping the Omani SME ecosystem, and support SME programs. He is also an active keynote speaker with contributions in a number of specialty symposia and in public media discussions of relevant economic issues. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome His Highness Sayyid Dr. Adham bin Turki Al Saeed to deliver his keynote speech. Allow me just a second while I get some moving mic. I cannot stand behind the podium.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين. In the beginning, I would like to thank MCBS for the kind invitation and for the double whammy of hosting and presenting. This is the more favorite part I enjoy rather than sitting and listening. We academics, although I'm a pseudo-academic, I must admit, tend to like to talk more than we listen, right? So I'm hoping today at least I will spur a conversation, if not literally, but one in our minds, about some of the sort of thematic issues on the concept of sustainability and business practices. Now, I should correct a few things as well in my short bio. CEO sounds like a big word for a very small consulting firm that myself and my colleagues started about 12 years ago. But it is my attempt to merge between what I do in the lecture theater halls and at university with what I believe is very important linkages to industry. And that was one way for myself and my colleagues to learn more about industry by engaging with them and being able to bridge some of the sort of gaps that we believe. I'm not sure if we were very successful, but alhamdulillah, I've learned a lot from that journey, and I'm looking to learn more, inshallah. But more on the topic of sustainability today. Now, I'm not a sustainability expert, but I've had exposure with the concept of sustainability, both as an economist, but also in engagement with industry in various sort of capacities. One of the perhaps more memorable ones was a long series of sessions with Oman Business Forum, which was previously ITHRA and then later on morphed into what we know today as a Tijara talk, a series of industry talks that I had both the pleasure and the honor to moderate for a good period of time. And the constant theme that we always spoke about as we were forward-looking towards what are the trends that we need to keep our eye on that affect the economy and businesses, sustainability was front and center. And in doing so, I'm going to bring some of those lessons learned as well from there. So the first question we need to ask ourselves, why are we here today? Why are we even talking about this? Dr. Mus had mentioned that this is a critical juncture for us, not only here in Oman, but everywhere else, for us as human beings, for, if I may just exaggerate a little bit, our survivability. And when we ask that question, perhaps we should be first defining what do we mean by sustainability. And depending on who you talk to and what field they're in, often sustainability could mean many things. Sustainability for business meaning continuity. Sustainability for the environment, it means the ability for the environment to provide us with the resources we need, but also to be habitual. We are able to live in it, and it becomes less hostile to us as inhabitants of this environment. So, in the Arabic saying, or what the Prophet ﷺ said, "La dharara wa la dhirar." So we do not harm, and no harm done unto others or unto ourselves, so to speak. And the environment is part and parcel of that. So sustainability in this context, I would define it as a broader sustainability in terms of not only economic well-being, but social well-being, environmental well-being, and today we have the fourth element, climate well-being, and we need to be well-defined in those, because even as businesses, when I talk about some of the sort of approaches or practical ways to look at how we address these issues, we need to be mindful of the differences between them. So, in that context, then, I ask what is or why is it an urgency? Well, for one, we know that recent reports have reported that 2024 up to about September or October has been the hottest on record, right? And we know that that record has breached the 1.5 agreed upon in the Paris Agreement. Now, a word of caution, obviously. This does not mean that we've passed the point of no return, but there are several other factors, the El Niño and El Niña effects taking effect in the cycle. So those of you who are better knowing in this area will know that there are multiple effects happening at the same time, but ultimately, we have reached an average level higher than where we'd like to be at this point. Whether we've breached the 1.5 literally, I'll leave that to the experts and the scientists. But what's more problematic today is that we're feeling the direct effects consistently. Higher temperatures means potentially warmer oceans. Warmer oceans affects life in the ocean, affects the weather patterns, and we've seen that even locally, as I'll speak about later. So that is one particular point that we should keep in our mind as we think about why is it a necessity. So we're not going to be scaremongering ourselves and thinking the end is tomorrow, la qaddar Allah, but we should be mindful that the impact is felt today, not in the future. So sustainability is an issue of the now. It was the issue of yesterday, and it will continue to be tomorrow. Now, there's another angle that we need to consider when we think about sustainability, is that businesses are being affected directly. No longer are we bystanders. No longer are we an audience, right? Some would argue that businesses are part of the problem in the first case. But let me look at the other side, with the recipient of those negative effects. If you're in the insurance business, you're probably the first one to feel the pain. How many cyclones have you had to cover the damage? If you're a government, how many millions of riyals and dollars and euros you had to cover for that damage? If you're an individual, what kind of property did you lose? What kind of asset did you lose in the process? It makes more sense for us to think about sustainability and addressing sustainability as risk mitigation. You might not be able to stop all of the risks and mitigate them, but you need to adapt to it as a business viability and sustainability. If you're a type of business that depends on certain geolocations, what kind of business model you're going to have that's going to help you survive those changes, whether they're rising sea levels or any other factors. If you're depending on the fact that there is a rainforest that you can cut down some trees to make some furniture, right? If those trees are no longer available because they've burnt, that's going to be a challenge, right? You've lost. How about the loss of habitat that you might depend on for all sorts of products, whether they're medicinal, pharmaceutical, and whatnot? Those are serious challenges. Now, for us in Oman, we've felt this very strongly in the last decade or so, but more recently, Cyclone Shaheen, when it hit the north of Oman, the estimated cost, and I say estimated because these are large numbers, was about $500 million, right? And government had to pay significant portions for infrastructure, but there were also insurance claims, damage on property, there were lives lost as well, right? So there are all sorts of issues that affect us directly in our day-to-day life and how we do business, whether we get disconnected from our customers or our customers no longer are able to come to us as well. Perhaps the other layer I would like to also focus on is that there are changeable patterns right now. To some extent, some of them are irreversible. We might not feel them in the region today, but around the world, there are active investors that are holding us accountable as businesses to what kind of investments we make. Sovereign wealth funds are beginning to talk more and more about green finance and whether you are upholding the standards of that green finance. What kind of greenwashing is no longer accepted, that we have a sustainability policy, but there's nothing to show for. Customers are making decisions about whether your product kind of falls within their moral compass. I don't like the naming of Generation Z and millennials and whatnot, because these are tags that we can just walk around and say, I think, therefore you should accept me. But all generations are beginning to react one way or the other. If you're part of, excuse my saying, including myself, from the older generation, we're thinking back in the day things were, produce was fresher, produce was, we're able to find fresh veg and whatnot. Today we don't know what goes into us, whether it's GMOs or any adjustments that kind of lead us to think, hang on, what is going on? Today we're talking about gluten intolerance, lactose intolerance, human intolerance as well, right? But that's a whole different story. But those kind of trends cannot be denied today. So sustainability needs to address these and many others as well. Now, if I were to think about how we go on about thinking about this, it is overwhelming to think that my company, my institution, academic, industry can save the world. Yes, it is. But it's a collective, as what we've heard earlier on, responsibility and duty. But where do we start? Where do we kind of focus? Where do we place our attention? Perhaps I should bring us a little bit closer to Oman, since we're here, is to kind of think of how we think about sustainability in Oman. And we start right at the top when I think of our Vision 2040, which sets a nation's transformational vision over the next 2 decades to reach to a point where we are developed further, we are competing with advanced economies, we are creating opportunities, we are being dynamic, we're being innovative, but more importantly, we're aware that the environment that we're in, the environment that we have benefited for the last 5 decades, from extraction of oil and gas, from using the environment, the life on land and in the oceans, as well, has been very beneficial for us. But that is a very fine balance, and that is stressed whether we like it or not. So the economics and the social outcomes and the environmental outcomes need to be balanced, and that's front and center in our vision, in one of our national priorities. But that isn't the only sort of direction that we as individuals or businesses need to focus and see where the country is going to. The country is also signatory to the Sustainable Development Goals 2030, which many of you are well aware of, are 17 key goals that places a lot of emphasis not on just GDP growth and GDP per capita growth and investment growth, but more about the holistic look at what development means. Additionally, development has always been about more output, more jobs, more spending, and more income. But at what cost? These 2 days, we're talking about the costs of that development and how we might recalibrate our development towards something more sustainable, and what guides us just as individuals, as countries, as businesses, is those sustainable goals. So I want you, during those 2 days, to think about where in that wheel of SDGs do you find yourself? Where do you create the collaborations? Where do you think businesses can work with academic institutions, with government, with NGOs, civil society, international organizations to address specific issues? And I remind you, you cannot address all 17 goals. Neither can all countries do that. That's why we have continuous improvement. Further to our focus on how we might address sustainability, we have an additional layer of climate, that fourth element I spoke about earlier on. Oman has made its commitments in 22 that we will reach by 2050 will offset our carbon. We're not going to be carbon free, we're not going to decarbonize, but we're going to be net zero, as all countries, between the range of about 2035 all the way to 2050 and 60. Now that is a significant challenge. All of the promises that we make and other countries made, and we've made them very clear in the last few COPs as well, is that we are working on this. We understand that our economic activity, just as everyone else, is responsible for what is happening around us, but we are feeling the brunt of that through drier summers, higher temperatures, more sort of intermittency of cyclones and severe weather as well. So we have put that not only in saying it, but we're beginning to build programs, and the program is making some serious initiatives today, both in the most critical sectors such as oil and gas, but in electricity, in how we design our buildings and how we use efficient energy, and we're looking at alternatives as well. And finally, when we think about our national sustainability or sustainable development, the Ministry of Finance has also introduced at the beginning of this year a financial framework for financing sustainable sort of infrastructure. So how do we build our sort of infrastructure, whether it's ports, airports, or highways, or bridges, or not? This obviously will stand the test of time to see whether we actually follow to the letter, whether we'll be forced to sort of fully operationalize. That is yet to be seen. But the criteria is out there to kind of sort of weigh out what are the pros and cons of specific development projects. But remember, development always has an urgency, and sometimes at the cost of the environment as well. So having such frameworks helps us hold ourselves to account, not the others, but ourselves to account as well. Now, we cannot imagine that business as usual is going to get us to where we need to be. Innovation is definitely the name of the game. Excuse these little sort of cliches that I'm going to use here. But if we were to make any impact, our current technologies do not address the issues. It isn't simply just turning off the lights. It isn't simply like stop printing paper. It isn't simply as changing whether you take public transportation or carpool versus switching to an EV. There's a bunch of collective options that we need to keep in mind and utilize. And some of the keywords that we often hear about is using technologies in a way to help us transform into that. Now, many of you today use AI one way or the other. If you haven't, please do, because it's an eye-opening experience. It's also a humbling one, but a fantastic productivity tool by all means, right? Much of these images are generated by AI, by the way. So I say that as a disclaimer, so if they don't look too good, I'll blame AI for that. But ultimately, why are we using technology? That is the key element. We're using technology to create efficiencies which will help me address certain issues. We're using technology, big data, AI and whatnot, to analyze the trends that are extremely difficult for us to manage just by running our regressions or looking through our Excel sheets or whatever it is. Technology is the tool. It's not going to be the solution that is going to give me the final answer of what needs to be. Our human input needs to be there because of that empathy, not only to ourselves, but to the environment and why we make the decisions that we do. Now, there are a lot of pathways that this technology can be used to help us reach to the goals we want. So we hear a lot about the circular economy, we hear about the net zero goals, and we hear about sustainable supply chains. For businesses, these are all interlinked. We know that our business activities add more emissions to the environment, and those emissions are causing all sorts of disruptions. Now, if I were to use these technologies to optimize, right? So coming onto here, I just turned on Google Maps to track a path. Now, interestingly, if you open Google Map and you've updated it, all right, you have to be diligent in doing that, it'll give you an option, what type of vehicle are you on? What type of path is going to reduce your sort of footprint, if you like, right? There are many options of measuring what you do. Now, for businesses, we take it to the next level. If you're in the logistics, as I'll talk about in a case study, this might help you design more efficient systems. Have you thought every time you open a delivery app, how much emissions are generated from that driver who goes to pick up your delivery to bring it to you? Could it have been better if you had just gotten into your car, or if it was closer by, walk to it or bike to it or whatever the case is, or we're too lazy to do that, right? Those are things that while technology enables a lot of opportunities, it also sometimes works against. So how do we harness that? So in circular economies, for example, let me give here a quick case study and say, be as using sort of all sorts of ways to, from waste to energy, creating collection points. We don't have enough recycling facilities in Oman, and we don't cover all of them. So usually it's a solid waste that's non-hazardous, such as cardboards and whatnot, that are often, but plastics and others that can be recycled, glass and whatnot, we need more of that. But what kind of technologies can we harness today? Those sometimes can be terribly expensive or can be affordable, but they're not necessarily economic in some sense. But creating those opportunities in the local economy. Now, we're changing the way we dump our waste. No longer are we just dumping it in pits. We're creating what was sometimes called engineering pits. Too complex for my understanding, but it reduces the amount of gases released. It reduces the amount of seepage into the soil, trying to reduce the sort of impact of our waste. That still does not stop the problem of food waste, fast fashion and how it creates. We as businesses are part of the problem of creating products that are not recyclable, including something like this. I recall finding one of these in my older laptop bags, and it was melting, basically. The plastics and whatnot. It was never designed to stay for that long. If you forget your items in the car, you might find that after some time they get affected. Our perfume bottles are never refillable. They're throwable away. Why not? Very simple applications that we use on a daily basis that you don't have the option even if you wanted to, right? So circular economies are interesting ways that could be adapted even at the community level. They don't have to be just in businesses as well. So there are a lot of opportunities that one might consider, but you need some sort of understanding of where these opportunities are. When we think about net zero sort of goals, and we think about not only what we produce, but what we produce and what our supply chain produces, and then what other beneficiaries from that's a very challenging proposition to say I'm responsible for a third party's usage of my products or my services or whatever I produce. Every time you type into ChatGPT or any other AI, ask yourself, how much energy are you using, right? I've recently put out a LinkedIn post on that, just a quick, I used AI to search on AI's output. And interestingly, some of it is shocking. In a year's time, how much is being used, how many EVs it would power. I don't recall the stats right now, but those are very small requests that I type on my phone or on but the amount of computational energy used. Now, that energy cannot all be renewable energy because it's intermittent. We're talking about data centers that could use up to 1 gigawatt of energy, and that's only to store and process. Can you imagine 1 gigawatt? That's about, what, 10% of Oman's production, if I'm not mistaken. all right? That's substantial, right? One data center. And those are large, substantial ones, right? So again, we're looking at sustainable supply chains. Businesses need supply chains to deliver, right? What kind of delivery services? Are you flying? Are you using trains if they're available? Are you using ships? Which one's more efficient? What routes are you taking, and so on? So if I think of how Oman is trying to work around this, many countries, we hear about EVs, but how many of you have driven one? How many of you have gone to see one? Right? How many of you are planning for the next purchase, right? It's all nice until you think, hang on, 400-kilometer range is not good enough for me. Where do you drive every day? Do you know how many kilometers you drive every day? Right? Once you start to keep logs, you'll see that in most cases, they can be affordable, right? They can be very, very practical, especially in city driving. Yes, if you commute, it might be a bit of a challenge, but still, we have a network. That's what Oman has been working on for the last few years. We came out with frameworks to enable those kind of things. Now you say, yeah, but they're for individuals, right? You know, go to home, to go to college, go to the mall, or whatever it is. But businesses are beginning to adopt this. Government is beginning to adopt it in a way to take the lead into sort of create whatever, there's a fleet of cars that is being used currently in one of the ministries, if I'm not mistaken, or the D1, that is going to provide a use case to say, listen, we've tried them, they serve the case. We've got charging stations in many of the petrol stations. You can see the sort of the anomaly there, right? And the kind of petrol stations, and now we're thinking, we always think I'm going to fill petrol. No, I'm going to stop at the charging station, right? I'm going to go to the mall, not to go to a shop, but because there are charging stations over there, or go to the airport or whatever they are as well. So Oman is beginning to make inroads into that. We're not the first, we're not unique in that sense. So we don't see Teslas everywhere, we see them, but Tesla isn't the only EV around there, right? And I'll talk about one of our local homegrown ones here. Now, to drive that innovation, now often we think of innovation, we think of the big sort of whales of technology, so the Apples and the Googles and you know, the Samsungs and all of the things that we're used to. But it's startups that are really making the big difference, especially in our region. Startups are the ones that are presenting solutions that big companies may not be ready, does not fit their model. We see it in banking, we see it in oil and gas, we see it in other industries. So, you know, I don't like to use the usual Ubers and whatnot, because those have been overused. I'm talking about homegrown solutions, right? And I'll talk about 3 of them here in a moment. But startups are looking at sustainability from a different angle altogether. They see opportunities. And if we were to present solutions, what better than those who have very few strings attached to traditional ways of doing business, to specific business models that are either archaic or are not fit to what we need right now. Now, those will not survive without the right support. Funding is primarily important, but it isn't the only one. Incubation, acceleration, empowerment, both from the regulation perspective. Fintechs take a long time in certain countries, including Oman, to come in until we've had our sandboxing system at the central bank, the regulations, the acceleration, and the funding, that we're seeing more homegrown fintech solutions come through. Yes, we can use Apple Pay and Samsung Pay, but how has it changed your life? If you're forgetful, you forget your wallet often, but never your phone, good on you. But in most cases, it's the same process. I tap my card, I tap my phone. The only problem with the phone is Apple or Samsung has more information about me than I would like, right? But the rest of it, it's the same. It's just a tool. But how about if you can have a digital bank that you could never need to go and see someone for very simple things, open account, closing account, taking a loan, you know, paying for services, opening your kids' accounts. I'm still told you still have to go to the bank and present, you know, their IDs and whatnot. It's like, hang on, there's an application that says open an account on it. Why do I still need to go there? But those things don't happen because a big bank decided to add the service. A smaller business somewhere, a startup, has started the idea, and that has been acquired. And we have examples of that. For those of you who have, you know, in Oman would know, Thawani is a good example of that, giving us alternative payment systems as well. And many businesses, if you've insured your car online or something, you get sent a little URL that you click on, and it takes you to Thawani. Now, that isn't Bank Muscat, that isn't National Bank of Oman or Sahara International, although they all claim to have certain innovations. But it's a small company that changed the way we think about payments. Does not have to be a POS machine held in a hand, or, you know, you swipe your card somewhere. It is simply a QR code and other options as well. Now, there are three companies that I'd like to bring your attention to that are creating in the sustainability sphere some impact. The first of which is 4401, right? Which is a company that captures carbon dioxide and injects it into specific areas in Oman and in other regions as well, where it will mineralize and turn into a solid within the rock structures. And those are unique sort of sediments, if I'm using the word correctly, that could absorb that and be stored for a very, very, very long time. Now, this has been proven, it has been piloted, and now it's expanding even to the UAE and other places as well, and the company has been recognized. In the last funding, they've received 36 million in investments into the company, proving themselves. They won, I believe, certain prizes, including the Musk Foundation and others as well. So that that idea started from Oman because Oman presented an opportunity that these guys saw as a great way to present a solution that could assist industry, especially those polluters that cannot adjust very quickly as well. But more so, it is an expensive technology to start with, but they are piloting it, they are scaling it, they are getting into solutions that may very well work, especially for us in this part of the world. The sister company or a subsidiary, Waqood, which is Waqood in Arabic, right, provides biodiesel solutions that were not available in Oman by reusing food oils and merging it with other traditional, so there's X% of your typical diesel that will be not fully diesel, but a mixture. I forget what the composition is. Now, there are a lot of challenges, but businesses could decide, listen, I want to reduce my carbon footprint. Now, the savings could be substantial from the beginning of your supply chain to the end, right? And they're making interesting inroad as well. Now, we always think of big leaps, but we need to take those steady steps to be able to. So if I'm in the logistics industry, if I have a fleet of cars that may very well could be converted to biodiesel, that is a very, very good option. We're talking about construction and other industries that use diesel as a primary mode of energy as well. The third example is Oman's first proper EV. We've had attempts at EVs before, but Mace presents a production line car that is coming out, I believe, this year, or has probably took bookings, and it was completely homegrown, right? Obviously, it's been assembled, but designed, the AI system and whatnot, that is providing option. Will it compete with the big BYDs and Teslas of the world and whatnot? That's not the idea. It's providing us with an alternative that is potentially adaptable for our local needs that we can apply as well. Now, those drivers are not gonna, we are not a car manufacturing country. To have this step means that we are learning how to do things, and we can be part of the story of these EVs as well. Now, for businesses, if you think, I'm not convinced with what you're saying, yes, let someone else worry. You know, I'm sure there are those who have met in Baku and Dubai previous year and Glasgow the year before must have sorted out the problem, right? They've made declarations, they've agreed on the funds that are going to fund all of the repercussions. For us businesses, or as businesses, we should not worry too much. We'll just follow the rules and we'll be okay. But there are opportunities to be had. Sustainable practices provide you with cost cutting, provides you with new business model opportunities that you did not see before. So going back to that 4401, right, which is the molecular weight of carbon, by the way, I'm told. That's the first thing I asked the guy. What is 4401? It's a molecular weight. So those of you who know a little bit of chemistry, that might excite you there. Now, those business opportunities mean that you could be a new service provider of something that is not available before. Whether you're using AI to map up better routes for businesses, whether you're finding solutions on how to design. We've got these iKitchen or the smart kitchens or the cloud kitchens, right? And again, I asked the owner, what do you guys do? You're cooking in the clouds? Or no. It's simply not using real estate to present the food. You're able to be very versatile, right? Which means you're also mindful of the resources that you're using. The energy, the food, and if you're mindful of what you're doing as a business, clearly you don't want to create waste. There's always going to be waste, but what are you going to do with that waste? Going back to the circular economy idea, waste could be compostable if it's food and be reused in one way or the other. But even then, it's an imperative for businesses to adapt, because your business model could be affected by climate. You might think, hang on, it doesn't really matter, right? But if you think of the global frameworks that will affect you, We think of the development goals and where you lie within those development goals. Are you with number 1, number 2, or 3, or 4? Maybe you can't solve world hunger, but you could provide a decent workplace. Maybe you cannot solve all the gender problems of the world and equality between the genders, but you could be empowering both genders, right? There are many things here. You could not be responsible for sustainable cities, but you could be smart production and supporting smart and sustainable consumption as well. You are responsible for your ESGs. If you're a listed company, if you're advising those, everyone is going to be held accountable. Whether those ESGs see eye to eye with what you're doing, whether you're producing lovely green-looking sustainability reports with a lot of pictures of sort of wind farms and photovoltaic panels and solar panels and whatnot, people are going to see through that and be asking what you're really doing, and they're going to be assessing you not only on that but on your emissions and scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 as well eventually. But more importantly is that now we've got carbon trading systems well established in places like Europe, to some extent North America, but we will have some of our own. So those big polluters, big producers are going to start to have to compete for those, and it's going to become more expensive to do that. But more so, carbon intensity is going to be captured in your exports, in your imports, in the logistics, and that the Europeans have already kick-started their tax adjustment, border adjustment, where we're, as exporters to the EU from any part of the world, are going to be scrutinized on the intensity of carbon in our production, which means those markets are going to be less accessible to us as well if we do not take the right paths of adjustments. Now, since we're in an academic institution, we have to talk a little bit about education, right? Now, we don't have all the necessary skills to drive our businesses, our society towards those goals that we wish to achieve. Education is going to play a very important role in developing those skills, developing those talents, but more importantly, changing the mindsets. It isn't enough to say, listen, here's a curriculum on, environmental XYZ, climate XYZ, but more importantly, we need to understand why we're doing it. Engagement, meaningful engagement. Let's not overwhelm ourselves by saying, I've got a graduate with a degree in, environment engineering, whatever, if that even exists, right? And they're going to solve the world's problems. That's not going to be the case. They need to be mindful that they could create impact, right? Now, training, for those of us who are already in industry, we need to change our ways. Whether I'm in academia, whether I'm in industry 1 or 2 or 3, how do I need to think about those things, educate myself on those things? What are the do's and don'ts, if you like? There are no set rules exactly. There are guidelines that we think about as well. And finally, talent. Talent is one of those tricky things, right? What is talent? How do you define it? Is the know-how? Is it the ability to adapt? What's more important is not just developing the talent from education or training and how you acquire it, but how do you retain that talent? That's going to be the challenge. Because if you don't, if it's seen that you are not doing enough, there's someone else who's doing better, you will lose that talent to them. And that becomes a problem because you're trying to build capacity in businesses and you're trying to get to sort of the level where that talent helps you grow as well. Now, let me give you a quick case study on what's happening in Oman today by an international courier company, DHL. So recently, DHL announced a number of initiatives to align itself with its sustainability goals. And those are applied in Oman, not only in other countries. I'm sure they would in other countries. But what DHL as a courier is aware of is it's going to be accountable for its emissions, and it's dependent on a supply chain. It's dependent on being able to connect A to B effectively. And much what it does usually is energy intensive, right? Flying planes and driving cars and whatnot, right? So they're thinking of streamlining all of those operations under key sustainability elements, using technology and changing ways of how they're doing things. So instead of obviously using the typical paper, which is the simplest thing we can do, right, is move away from paper to something else. So I noticed the iPads with the programs and whatnot saves from the fact that we'd have paper running around with us. But we still love paper. We're still producing. I've recently received a very thick booklet called the Graduate Booklet. Thank you to the organization who sent it, but I'm not sure that's the way to go, right? But ultimately, we think of printing as a way to preserve something, right? And it's there. Whether we keep it on the coffee table and never read, that's not important. We've preserved the idea. But when you digitalize as a business, you're starting to move away from your typical paper business to becoming more efficient, but more importantly, you're using less of that intensity. Because it's not about the paper and whether you print more or less, it's the whole energy process. If it has to be recycled, that's also using energy as well. So if we reduce the amount of, these are simple things that we take for granted, obviously, but also what they're using is they're reducing their carbon footprint by introducing electrical vehicles. How much of their fleet will be fully electrical, that is yet to be seen, but these are initiatives that they're talking about. Now, they're using technologies like IoTs and blockchain to track, but when you use all of these technologies, you also know what is your impact, because you know how far you've gone, what kind of emissions you're producing, and how do you manage that. So you're able to link energy consumption with the technologies that provide you, but also provide your customers, using those technologies, the ability to access that information on time. Some tracking systems will tell you, listen, it's at port, it's at airport, but you don't know exactly where. Some would tell you, hang on, it's just been moved from belt 1 to belt 2. That amount of detail might not interest all of us. I just want to know, when is it going to get to me? I don't want estimates anymore on exactly, especially if my business depends on receiving those things, packages in time. But more importantly as well, they're introducing waste reduction as well. Now, obviously, I spoke about the sort of reducing paper use. That is one part of the story. But think of the packaging that we use. Is the packaging reusable? You ever received a package from any of these companies and you're just fighting to open it? I mean, I don't know what they make it from. It has to be durable. But is that recyclable? Where is it going to go at the end of the day, right? So trying to change those ways, we might not feel it now, but eventually we would. Now, if I have to think of the road ahead, obviously it's going to be windy, it's going to be challenging, but it's a road of choices. Where do you want to be? Do you want to be on a sustainable path? What does that sustainable path mean? Is it one sustainable path for all of us? For the planet, yes. But for us individually, no. Each business, each industry has to find its way to its sustainability. That cannot be dictated by one entity or another. It should not be dictated by anyone, neither government nor international organization, but it could be guided towards that goal. Are you looking for efficiencies? Are you looking for less emissions? Are you looking, but ultimately we know what the overall goal might be. So for businesses, we need to understand what are the relevant sustainability goals to us. Whether we use the SDGs, whether we use our national priorities or whatnot, we need to be definitively clear on that. We cannot say, yeah, we want to be sustainable. It doesn't all matter to you, right? So if I'm talking about hunger as one of the objectives, and if my business has nothing to do with direct human interaction, then everything else becomes CSR. And CSR isn't sustainability. CSR is giving back to the community. When you design your business models, your values, your visions and missions, whatever you want to call them, you need to embed sustainability in there. But you need to understand, what does this mean to us? Why are we talking about sustainability, and how do we define sustainability in our core? Finally, and I think more importantly, do not forget and do not ignore that there are low-hanging fruits that could be taken advantage of today that could help set the path. There's nothing more disappointing than setting high expectations, high goals, and not being able to achieve them because you set yourself up for failure. Yes, dream big, but start steady on a path that will lead you eventually to where you need to be. I hope I've been successful in at least tickling those questions in your mind, inshallah. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Highness. Okay. We extend our profound gratitude to His Highness Sayyid Dr. Adham Al Saeed for his truly inspiring and thoughtfully articulated remarks, which have set the perfect tone for this event and reminded us of the values and vision that guide our efforts. And now, we're honored to welcome Engineer Saeed bin Salim Al-Shamfari, the CEO of Oman Convention and Exhibition Center, and a prominent figure in the Middle East's events industry. He chairs the Global Association of the Exhibition Industry, UFI, for the Middle East and Africa region. Recognized by Forbes Middle East as a top travel and tourism leader, Engineer Shamfari has a strong background in telecommunications and business administration. He has completed leadership programs from prestigious institutions and holds certifications in coaching. He brings with him a wealth of experience and insight. His address will make a valuable contribution to the discussion on sustainability, innovation, and education, critical global challenges that are defining the course of our collective future. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Engineer Saeed bin Salim al-Shamfari on the stage.
Assalamu alaikum, Sabah al-Khair, Your Royal Highness, Your Excellency, Dr. Musa, thanks for, and the faculties also, thank you for having me today. It's an honor to be in the House of Academia and to follow that speech. You made it very hard for me. There was a lot of information. I've had slides and I was thinking, done. So I'm like, I'm not sure what to cover anymore. However, I'll try to bring in a humble experience from where we're coming from, or where I'm coming from as an OCEC, and to highlight such an industry and how the impact of an industry. In the first scene, you are actually seeing a building that has the host millions of people, and an event that has thousands of meals. And a lot of people are actually using a lot of carbon and unreusable products. And you're thinking, how they can make it? How can they actually find a way to actually create a sustainable act? And when you look at this building, it's always a massive. The first time I attended the building, I was thinking, coming from telecom, how can I manage something like this? And it's not just by one person, obviously, it's the team and the effort and the strategy, and that all pulls it together. But always, one fact that always resonates with me is how can we create a safe environment, but not just safe environment for us, but safe environment also for our visitors, and then align that with a sustainable act for us to not to look at sustainability as a threat, but look at it as an opportunity. And then how can we position ourselves in a world where massive, grand, huge spaces can be looked at in a way that, no, sustainability is a part of our DNA, and as a part of our acts, a part of our strategy. We will host you at a place that the environment is safe, not just for you as a human, but also for our environment around us. Okay, good. So in the first initial, we always thought to create a brand for us is where the world meets, where events meet, where changes happens, where people get together, where people get trades together, where people find enlightenment and find actually their visions and strategy for the future. OCEC has always been a host for many different things. And then the host for a strategy for 2040 actually started at OCEC. So a lot of big events happen at OCEC, including Sustainability Week, Green Hydrogen, and many others. At this presentation, I would like to highlight a little bit of our definitions of how we look at sustainability, and also how practical designs and practices that we do inside OCEC create a difference. And also how can we create and influence behaviors, not just as a building, but also to the visitors who come to the center. Sustainability as a definition is what we're using today for us to create a difference, but also how can we maintain that for the future generation as well. So not to consume everything today, but also keep something for the future, but not just something, but enough for them also to create a difference for them as well. It's not just an environmental, but it's also social and it's an economic. All the three facts that comes together to create a sustainable act. Sustainability as a definition can come in very different ways, and as Royal Highness has mentioned, people and industry and corporates look at it in very different ways. The most important is how to use today to make a difference for the future as well, but not to also hold yourself back, but also look at the future to be creative and innovative and using the technology and using the product of today, but also maintaining it for the future. So in a lot of cases, when we speak about sustainability and you talk to people in the corporate world, they'll always say it's the budget, it's the challenges, it's the behaviors, it's also the decision makers, stakeholders, it's our visitors, it's expensive, we don't have the right people, we don't have the right talents, how can we do this? And it's not really complicated when you think about it in the fact that there's a lot of, people say limited resources. There are not enough talents in the business. There are not enough product that we have available for us to use. And they talk about budgets, and they talk about government support, and they talk about different things, but they also talk about corporate DNA. And your Royal Highness has actually mentioned it has to be part of your DNA for you to actually start looking at it in a proper way. It has to be part of your strategy. It has to be part of how you're thinking about sustainability and how you want to take your business to the next level. It's a competitive advantage if you know how to use it better. If you only position yourself from our perspective as a venue, that we are only a venue that hosts events. We are only willing to charge you the dollar sign when it comes to event. Then you are actually looking at it a very wrong way. There's millions of other venues. And we could have been welcomed in the OCC next time when you have the conference, by the way. But I like this venue too. But there's so many other venues. And today's world, they're actually creating more venues that you are actually thinking. There's museums that turn to become a venues. There's football stadiums that be turning to a venue. It's an open land that turns to become a venue. So are we really competing with venues that have different sizes or just an events or people? No, we have to create also something that is more special and then also sustaining that for the future. Sustainability for us is a vision and it's a part of our DNA. It's a part of how we think about how we want our visitors to feel and how we wanted to make sure that we're sustaining this for the future. When I first joined OCEC, coming from 17 years of telecom, it was tough to think about how can I create a difference at an event business. And a business, an industry that yet has not started, and yet it's actually still at the baby stages. People don't yet understand what's the impact and implications of creating events in the country, and what is the multiplier effect when it comes to economy. So I always told my team, we are creating something for the future, not creating it for us. We're just basing the foundations. We're basing the foundations by provoking the industry, by provoking events, entertainments, and big conferences. And then when we talk about the COP, I would love to host the COP in Oman. That would be an amazing sustainability act. And it's actually, at one point, we actually created a wall of events. We had a team building, and we said, okay, what kind of event we would like to host? So we throw it back to the staff. This was 5 years ago. And people selected entertainment events, concerts, big conferences, big sport events. And then we went one by one. And then we created a wall next to the staff area, and it has all those pictures of these events. Guess what? In the last 3 years, we managed to host at least 1/3 of those events. They came to Oman. And one of them was a COP. And another one is World Economic of Davos, to have the next Middle East version here as well. Why not? We have the right elements. We talk about peace, and we talk about a right place for everyone. Why not monetizing that? Why not pushing that? So creating sustainability as a part of our DNA is very important, because we position ourselves in a place that can host over 1.6 million people every year, in a place that have over 55 different rooms, 5 big halls. And in the last few years, at certain points, we have 7 events, 7 global events at the same time. We talk about 20,000 people walking around, trying to find their comfort and their rooms, having their meals, and also getting technology to be part of their system. Imagine the kind of operation that happens in the back. I really appreciate the people who also organize this conference, but you understand organizing conference, how does it take? The details, and then the behind the scene, and the cautiousness of how can you make a place like that safe, environment friendly, and good experience for everyone. I'll share a small experience. It's not in my presentation, but when I first joined OCEC, 1 week after I joined, I met a friend of mine from civil defense, and he's like, have you checked the civil defense system at the center? Obviously, that night I couldn't sleep, because I didn't check it. I just joined a week ago. And they didn't do any fire drill for me or any HSE induction or anything like that. So the first thing I did next morning, I drove with my car. First one I called was the HSE manager. I said, listen, I've been here for 1 week. You haven't done any drill for me. You haven't even given me the induction yet. And how can, if you don't do that for me, what happened to the person who comes in the first hour? This means, so I really appreciate when you do the induction in the morning. That's important, because you need to know where you're going, and it's part of your user experience. So running a center like this, it's massive, and it's have a lot of accountability and responsibility as well. Responsibility to our guests, but also responsibility to the social, economic, and sustainable environment that we are in. And we would never want to disconnect ourselves from this, because it is our competitive advantage to the future. So when we talk about OCEC, it goes from the top. We talk about sustainability for us in 3 different levels. One is the design of the building. And the second thing is how many practices we do internally to create a difference. And third is the experience level. People who come from outside, what do they do when they come to the OCEC? So when we look at anything in relationship to sustainability, we look at these 3 layers. When the government decided to build OCEC, they didn't just want to build a convention center. It's not a traditional convention center. It's not the normal, typical one you see in different places. Very industrial, very practical. It is just a hardcore event venue. They actually created a venue that is a gold certified venue. They have actually looked at how renewable energy can be used inside. How can we use energy to sustain it? The lights, the filtration of air that happens inside the system, inside the center, and air conditioning, the greens that you see around. I've actually had visitors not calling us a venue. They said, actually, you guys are more of a spa. Because we feel like there's waters are everywhere and the greens that are surrounding yourself. So in the first hand for us, it's a responsibility. How can we maintain something like this? And when you look at, when you are a LEED certified building, or you don't just get the certificate, you have to renew your certificate every year. They need to make sure that you actually continue your sustainability act. So you need to maintain your building, maintain your equipment, maintain everything around it. And when you look at it in a cost factor, it's a little bit more expensive than just having the practical, easy way. But we never thought that cost is actually high cost or inexpensive, because we know that it will bring us a competitive edge. And so when we talk about it, we always say we are a gold certified. My next step was for my team, how can we reach to the platinum level? And getting to the next level is not also as easier, because the design has accomplished, and I'll tell you how can we get to the next step. So we thought, okay, if the building is sustainable, if the building is gold LEED certified, what does our act? So immediately we start looking at how can we sustain the building. That's in terms of operation and maintenance, looking at the right maintaining tools for the building, and how can we keep it up in terms of the glasses and lights and greens and everything happens around us. But we took it also to the next level, food. There's thousands of meals that goes out to the people. And in our hospital, willingness and generosity culture, we always like to see a lot of food. Not just one meal, not just a simple meal, but buffets of everything. And when you travel around the world now, that actually has changed, because people will have small bites now when you go to conferences. They don't anymore have big buffets. They have a small place of different things that you can just enjoy and still stay awake for the next session. We make sure that people after lunch, they don't listen. That's what we do. But we'll do a lot of meals at the center, and we need to make sure it's sustainable as well. So whatever people don't eat, we are actually associated with food banks, where they do thousands of meals that can repackage again and give it to the people who need it. But anything that's not be used and that we cannot also share it with others because of HSE factors, we also do soil composing as well. We work together with the hotels around us. We have machinery that actually does that. And part of our composing system now, we use it from the leftover. But from our experience, we need to go beyond that. We need to start changing the experience of the people. We should not just fix it by creating food banks and composing, but also how can we create a culture and an experience that can only have enough food for your taste and enough food for your well-being. And that's healthier food that does not just get thrown away, or again, because we'll have to keep in mind how the repackaging and the logistic and everything has to happen. There's other people who are responsible for that. So for us to feel more safer and guarantee that it's actually the Sustainability Act happens properly, we need to start changing the culture and experience of the people. And the other part is we took it to our responsibility that we do not just plant a lot of trees, but also plant trees that fruits trees. So we had a lot of lemon trees, olive trees, date trees around the center. And we also have bee farming. We actually have boxes. We actually produce over 5 kg of honey from the center. And we actually give it as a giveaway made at OCEC. Because we wanted people to feel that this is not just a center that they come to for their events, but also a center that they can also create and produce food for them. So it's fresh from the farm, fresh from the venue. We also looked at solar. Solar came on the design, and this slide I will talk about solar in another level. But solar also is being used heavily in chilling water at our energy center. All the water chilled that happens for the energy center is actually solar, based on solar. And that came in the design. It was our responsibility also to carry forward and also expand that to make sure that anything that require energy also come from solar. But we went beyond that. A few years back, we were sitting around and with a team that we created called the Green Team at OCEC, and we said, okay, what is one crazy idea we should actually push to have? And they said, how about we put a solar panel at the rooftop of the building? And I said, okay, but that sounds amazing. Can we generate a lot of electricity? But how much cost? And we're like, you know what? Let's run an RFP. Let's see what's going to happen. So we designed an RFP and we threw it out. And we contacted a couple of companies. And we have one company who said, listen, it is also part of our DNA to create a sustainable energy. And they came in and invested at the rooftop of the building, as you see right now. And maybe if you fly over OCEC and you look down, you'll see yourself again. Because that's how big is the mirror. That produced over 4.6 megawatt of electricity solar on the rooftop. That's over 7.8 in terms of annual generation of electricity. That's only our phase one, because we wanted electricity first for us, but for the energy center, until we have the policy for selling to the grid, we will probably fill up this parking lot with solar as well. Because we want to make sure Al Arfan city or anyone in Al Arfan also can get a green energy from us. As we have the space and we have the willingness and they have the maintaining of the people, we wanted to create more solar and more green energy for people. And those are our partners, Total Energy. They came in and they were quite brave, to be honest, because we were only their second project after Safa project. They have one with the Safa company, and we are the second one, and we were on the rooftop of the building. So we actually were trying to find if there's any similar project around in the region that actually does the same. Funny to say, since I am part of the international associations and I go to a lot of sustainability conferences and everything, when they stand up and start speaking about food banks and sustainable acts, and I always say, we've done that. That's been done. So, and they stand up and say, listen, we have a food bank that happens. I tell my team, 2 years ago, we started that, and it's done. And the solar is 2 years ago, it's done. And now we need to think about what's next. We are at the lead. We need to continue to be at the lead. So these people believed in our values and terms. We have had so many challenges. When you try to do a project like this, you will always have another engineer who's saying, this is not the things to do. And someone else will say, we should stay exactly where we are. And I always say, when you have resistance, that's when you're doing the right thing. And I said, okay, keep on pushing. So we went on for over a year until we get this project. There was a point where I threw the paper. I said, listen, if you're not going to believe in our values, we don't need you as a partners. And that's how much it takes to make a difference. And Your Royal Highness, you said you need to make a choice. And choice is by standing for your values. If you believe in sustainability, you need to stand for that values, no matter what happens. Make the smart decisions, but also you need to find the right partners. We didn't just stop there, because we wanted to also listen to the industry, people who works with us. We're talking about exhibition organizers, the organizers themselves who comes in and create booths, and they create also their own stands, and they use their own products. And what is challenging for you? How can we become a partners? How can we share with you our philosophy? How can we share with you our DNA? Because we want to make sure that they just don't see the green, but also, or the Sustainability Act, but they're also part of our Sustainability Act. So we listen to them, we align with them, we meet a lot of partners who are looking to have different solutions and different initiatives, and then we also create business models with them. One thing is, and an example for that is, you always see those fancy stands that when you come to the convention center. Some of them are very simple when they come with shell schemes, which is actually shell schemes when it comes to sustainability is very reusable. We've had them for over 10 years, and we continue to reuse them. They're like Lego pieces. You can just put them together, and you can create so many fancy designs. However, the modern designs comes with a lot of wood, metals, plastics, printing, and a lot of heavy stuff. Sadly to say, we discovered that, and it's very expensive. For any other users who will create one stand, it varies from 5 to 10,000 Omani riyals. It could go up to 20, 30,000. I've seen ones that almost price of a house. And then you ask them, what happens to it after? And what happens to it, you should see the backyard when all of this is over. It's full of a lot of unused or broken wood, metals that is just taken, and I don't know where they take it to. So that's what happened. The first year when I saw that, this is not acceptable. This is not acceptable at all. We have to start changing the game of the commercial. One is we need to recycle anything that comes in the back. If they don't take it, we recycle it. So we had a filtration system now in the back where they filter the woods with the metals and the plastic. We have to put it separately. We have a contractor also who believe in the same values like us, that they will take it to the right channels for reproducing for those materials. And then we didn't really stop there. We actually now giving guidelines to our exhibitors to say, listen, you need to create a reusable materials. You need to use wood and steel and things that can be reused again. And if you give us certification that you actually reused materials, we'll give you a better discount for your next promotion, for your next stands. And not that, so we don't want to take the burden only in us. We tell them, why don't you use a stand that can be reused more than one time? And we will store it for you. And we will assemble it for you. There will always be a charge because there's an operation cost, but we'll give you a solution. If you have no place for it to store it, we will store it for you. And the next time you come in, we will also install it for you. That will be a cost. But there will never be the same cost as you did it in the first time. But you have to create the design and the stand to make it more reusable. So this way, we're not just looking at the cost, but we're looking at solutions for them to make sure their act also change. And that's very important. So 2023, 1.5 million. Actually, this year, we're receiving way more than this. I think we're receiving at least 1.8 million visitors has already come to the OCSC. We are not stopped there. There's a lot of responsibility of many different people comes in. We have our smaller visitors, probably babies in months, because they come with their families to the family events. And we have all different type of people. I always tell my teams, one day we are engineers, another day we're doctors, another day we are some sort of scientist or maybe HSE. So we change our act every time we have different clients because they expect us to understand their language. But with this number of visitors, how can we impact their behaviors to make it more sustainable behaviors? How can we create an act on them that they start thinking, I need to change the way how I go to the OCSC? And by creating either the education, the guidance, or the know-how, or setting the right examples, I think smaller acts sometimes create a bigger act for the future. When I used to work in telecom, we always say, let's do a small promotion now to create a little bit bigger next one, and the third one will have to be the massive one. So it's actually you dilute your competition. But in this part, no, we actually create a small act so for you to start thinking, why should I park too far away when the AV station is next to my doors? So we make them green, and we say, let's do stations, and then we create over 8 parking that's only for AV electrical cars. And they're next to the door. And any times when I find another car there, I always call the police and say, listen, you need to find them because they're not parking in the right place. But they get the act, a smaller act, start creating more steps in the future. And we say, why don't you do carpooling instead of even bringing your own car? Why do you have to leave 4 people just leave your car at the ministry or at your company, come together to the event? So we also try to promote that people get their act together. Also, when they come into the center, what sort of activity do they do? We have a lot of people fighting us to continue to have the plastic bottles at the OCSC. Continuously. They fight us. I want a separate bottle locked in. And that is a very strange act. We say, listen, we'll get you glass bottles where you can have paper cups, and they will still fight against that. So we try to find the options together, but we have to create for them options. Changing people's behavior is not easy, but it takes time. And it's one simple act at a time. And when we try to look at this 1.6 million, we feel responsible for them, as we can influence also their behaviors as a corporate. And I will leave you with this picture. That is the first picture that you guys probably see when you drive around OCC. This blue, beautiful flowers. And if you don't know yet, this is the sultan flower. This is the registered sultan flower in, I think in Australia, if I'm not mistaken. And it's part of the design of OCC, and you see it from everywhere. This picture doesn't have any real filter on it. This is exactly how it looks like from the top. And when we see this every time and we use it as a part of our symbol, so it is a flower, we feel sustainability is really part of us. And we have to make sure that we continue to act and continue to make changes, not just for us, but for the future. Sustainability doesn't mean threat, but it means a lot of opportunity if you know how to do it properly. And sustainability should not just create for you a lot of challenges, but should create for you a lot of innovations. Because you need to think of solutions out of the box that can create an act, an identity, and better generation for the future. So I will leave you with that, and really thank you for the opportunity. It's great to share a little bit. And by the way, this is not an advertising because you have to come to OCC. For sure not. But you're always welcome at OCC. But we just, I thought as a case study, and Aisha and I, we know each other for a while, and I thought something like this could inspire people to make something that's completely not sustainable, to turn it to completely sustainable to the DNA. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Engineer Saeed Shanfari, for your enlightening presentation. Moving on, I would like to invite His Highness Sayyid Dr. Adham bin Turki Al Said and Engineer Saeed Shanfari to the stage again for a brief question and answer session. Dr. Saeed Al Kitani, Associate Dean for Community Outreach at MCBS, will be moderating the session. Dear guests and faculty, staff and students, please feel free to share your questions with our speakers as we engage in a meaningful and insightful discussion. We encourage everyone to take this opportunity to gain clarity, share perspectives, and deepen our collective understanding of the topics presented.
Your Highness and Engineer Saeed, thank you very much for this very nutritious breakfast for our brains this morning. One of the reasons, we are organizing this conference, MCBS would like really to feed into the current efforts made by the government to prepare the next 5-year plan, okay, the 11th 5-year plan. I would like really to give myself the privilege of asking the first question, and then I'll go to the audience, and it will be very brief, inshallah. Listening to you both, and listening also to the dialogue taking place now nationwide about the, the 5-year plan, the 11th. When it comes to sustainability, business, and technology, where are we now? Because this next 5-year plan, the 11th, it will take us to the mid journey, to 2040. We'll be in 2030 when complete it. And we'll have to pause and ask ourselves whether we are meeting our targets or not. So I would like really, Your Highness, to share your views How is, our performance in that regard when it comes to technology, business, and sustainability? Are we meeting the targets? Are we getting there?
I think you've asked the toughest question one could ask. I think we should be mindful that sustainability is a journey. We have set ourselves not only to 2040 but to 2050 as a way to think about how we manage the climate aspect of sustainability. We, as Oman, has been working very hard on the environmental aspects, more so on land, but now we're even addressing sea as well and life under the sea. Oman has been working hard at expanding its natural reserves to maintain the habitats. We've had some that have been there for decades, from the late Sultan Qaboos Tayyiballah Thara. We're talking about the Arabian oryx. We're talking about the gazelles in, on the Tiwi road to Sur. We're talking about even the Star Reservation in Dakhiliya as well, or is it in Sharqiya? So there's been a lot of effort, but what's happening now is that we've got more focus on climate with our net zero ambitions, and we're beginning to see acceleration of the programs. Now, these programs will definitely be part of the 11th plan, but these programs will depend not only on government making the move, but the companies, the private sector, whether they're small or large, to provide some of the solutions that will help us decarbonize certain sectors as well. I think we're beginning to make inroads to some of the commitments that we have placed upon ourselves. So we're looking at electrification of transportation, especially personal. Now we're beginning to talk more seriously about electrical vehicles being potentially a viable option in the next 5 years. We've created a certain set of regulations there. Now, the challenge is that we've got a lot of initiatives working at various levels towards the ultimate goal. The biggest challenge for us will be in the next 5-year plans is to decarbonize and greening industry, because that's where one of the key emitters for Oman is. And the challenge there will be that these are already active investments that will need to introduce newer technologies. Oman isn't the sort of powerhouse of creating the technology yet. So this means that much of the technology we'll see will have to be adopted from what's available in the rest of the world. So when I talked earlier on about carbon capture, that is a viable, yet not as economically affordable for all companies to do so, especially the smaller ones. But when we talk about companies like state-owned enterprises, especially in oil and gas and others taking lead, this will create use cases. This is what happened with renewable energy in Oman and solar, with captive energy in those sectors, the energy sector that kind of led the way. PTO and OQ and others have placed certain, whether it was mirrors or whether it was the solar panels themselves, as a way to kind of pilot this now that we see in our convention center and others. Now, that will need to be scaled, and more of that technology needs to be developed in Oman. Now, we might not innovate the technology, but adopt it and start to bring it home, closer to home, is going to be part of the story. It's not the full story. So on the way of innovation, Oman is making inroads. But then remember, the metrics could be research done at universities, number of PhD holders, number of engineers. What we want to see in the next 5 years, inshallah, more of an impact from businesses, increasing R&D and coming up with viable. So when I talked about the EV mace, for example, that is an example of what we can do in Oman without having to spend astronomical resources as well, and not government taking the lead, government supporting those who do that. When we talk about carbon capture, when we talk about the investments that go in oil and gas versus $36 million, that's, if you divide that by 2.5, that's less than 20 million Omani riyals. That's a fraction of the billions we spend in oil and gas. But this particular technology is assistive to reaching our objectives. So I think there is still a lot of build-up that is necessary. 2030, we should be more concerned about SDGs and less concerned only by the midway point to 2040. And I think there is still a lot of work to be done on those other elements of sustainability, especially when it comes to responsible production, responsible consumption, sustainable cities and whatnot. There is still a lot of work to be done, and it's part of our journey, I believe.
Thank you, Highness. Engineer Abdul Saeed, would you like to say?
I won't add much to that. I'm just going to speak about it from a different, a view. There's a lot of action that happens in the ground. Obviously, there's more to happen, but there's also a lot of actions happens in the ground. And if I recall my story with the solar project and then bringing Total Energy as a part of it, the beginning was we will not be able to do it because it's expensive. How can we convince anyone? But when we went out, there was more willingness to be partners. And I think we have established now the mindsets and know-how. We just need to start speaking about it and say who else is willing to put their hands together to make it happen. And I think this is already a good start because creating the know-how and the foundation, it takes time.
True.
But creating the acts after that, accelerate faster. So that's what I want to add.
Thank you, Engineer Said. Okay, now let's take some few questions from the ground. And please identify yourself and make your question brief. We don't have much time, please. Captain Fahad.
Good day, sir. Thank you for your time. My name is Captain Fahad. I'm one of the faculty members at MCBS in aviation. There are three, as we understand, three types of sustainabilities, social, environmental, and economic. In your opinion, which is a priority, or is it a priority, or are we working synergistically in all three at the same time? Short and sweet.
Thank you.
As much as the ESGs get a lot of bad rap for what to prioritize and whether the S and G are important, or is it just the environment? Some would even suggest forget about all of that and just focus on emissions and whatnot. I think it's a matter of priorities. But ultimately what you find is that a lot of the CSR that was done previously now is coming under the social impact with the ESG. Governance is critically important in anything we do, whether it's public or private, or for society generally. Systems need to, and that governance needs to be challenged to see the improvements. So I don't believe we should prioritize, but ultimately, better governance means that sustainability policies and initiatives and strategies cannot be achieved without proper governance. And therefore, most of those are linked. Why are we doing all of this? It's for us, humans. It's for the next generation and the one after and the one after. So the S, the social aspect, is critically important. I cannot believe that we could sort of in any way dissect them and say this one is more important than that. But we can prioritize where we think the more impact there is. And that's that we need to be more selective and clear on our objectives rather than simply trying to say a broad brush. You know, so these metrics are a bit, those who set them ultimately disagree on what's more important or not. And one institution would say, my measure of this is best or the other. So optimally, I think you need to maximize your performance in all of them, but keep in mind, if you are going to damage the environment, then definitely the environment is going to need to be higher on the priority. But damaging the environment also has social consequences and obviously means lack of governance as well.
Any other questions? Please.
Yeah, good morning. I'm Dr. Vijaya, faculty in Computer Science Department. A small question I have it. Under your leadership, experience leadership, how can a private and public collaboration in Oman have, better express, okay, in the terms of innovation and entrepreneurship in the context of sustainability?
I wouldn't say I'm an expert, nor the leadership aspect, but thank you nonetheless. What we've seen from the development of most of the initiatives in Oman, government has always taken the lead. But today, government is looking to play an empowering role in many of these aspects. So in innovation, government has always been using the tools available to enable organizations such as this one we're here in today, the private sector in terms of R&D development, fabrication and whatnot. But where we've seen the actual impact was in smaller businesses and startups, them taking it upon themselves to make that change. So if we talk about prototyping and fabrication, it was the private sector that actually started. A startup called Innovation Factory that started in Knowledge Oasis Muscat, that actually built their own facilities when they weren't satisfied with what's out there, and developed a rather rigorous process of prototyping and assisting other businesses. Then the public makers Oman came later on in the Innovation Park Muscat to complement the story. So the innovation story has never been about public or private. It has to be a collaboration. Anywhere in the world you'll see either funding of research, prioritizing technology that could be tested. So we know the internet has been that. It's been all of the technologies that we've had either been used for specific purposes. GPS today was used primarily for military purposes, then open to non-military personnel and organizations. But the initial seeding, usually, especially in a smaller economy, an outfit like us here in Oman or the region, is usually from the government. But if government takes it upon itself to do that, it may not hit the mark because of the priorities. That's why we expect private actors to help guide the process. Let me just highlight, there's always a risk when private actors take it upon themselves to set things without ethical boundaries and the right regulation that might have consequences, but because they are able to. So I'm talking about the Bill Gates of the world and the Elon Musks of the world thinking they could provide solutions without being well aware of some of the consequences. Then it becomes a little bit of a monopoly on those innovations and the impact and development.
If I may add also, I think the collaboration is very evidence to the activity that's happening on the ground. As you see, a lot of startups right now supported by venture capitals is either directly related to the government, like the Future Fund, if you heard about it, and any others venture capitals that is in the private sectors, when I look at Ingaz Oman or others, who actually reward projects that more are related to sustainability and environment, and they're actually investing like seed investors onto this, which comes from either or the venture capital of the government or the private sectors. And both are creating enough platform for more of these projects to come up to the surface. And I think creating this act from generations of come about in schooling to the college and more creates a bigger act that comes in the future as well. So I think the seats and the work of the government has been a lot in different areas, but it's not going to be handhold for all the way, because also the economical impact has to be also rewarding. So there has to be from the private sectors back to the top if they take those initiatives to make economical scale of them.
Thank you, Engineer Said. I will take two more questions and then we will wrap up. Dr. Aisha.
شكرا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بداية, thank you, Dr. Adham, thank you, Mr. Said, for your inspired presentation. Actually, we feel happy about what you present, and you really inspire us. My question is to Mr. Said al-Shamfari. How your sector, your event sector, help Oman and contribute in economic diversification and meet sustainability goal?
Okay, the first part, I can speak for another 3 hours.
Okay, just
that's
we
for
need
sure.
your participation to
And
inspire us.
I will connect it to sustainability, so to make it shorter for sure. I think if you recall back, there has sustainability and sustainability focus came after the government has initiated the 2050 Zero Carbon Initiative. And we have hosted at OCEC the Green Hydrogen Summit. And we have now the third version coming up very soon next year. We also hosted the Sustainability Week, which has also collected a lot of companies from the energy sectors and the initiative related to oil and gas or other industry for them to create zero initiative and zero carbon initiatives. As a center, we try to create that environment where people can come together and share ideas and then create more ideas of the futures. As a center, it's important to not just highlight it on the exhibition side, but also attract international conferences that can speak about sustainability and also put forward more ideas for us to take forward. But also we try, that's why it's part of our act as well. So if we host them, we better act them as well. So it's not just we host them and we forget about the acting. We'll act as well, and we try to make a change on that. But if you speak about just a little bit of a spin-off for the economical impact of the entertainment and also event industry, it's huge, because the multiplier effect can touch the simplest person who's just on the street trying to pick up someone to the restaurant next door. And when, I think if you recall last week, we actually come to a point where we had no room for us to meet at the center as an employee. We ran out of rooms, and I got a call from someone in Qurum, in one of the hotels, saying, we're fully booked. What happens in that side of the city? And I said, because we have a lot of events. And that what happens when you have events, you create that economical impact to everyone. But also making sure that is also focused on the government initiative when it comes to 2040 initiative, and how can we attract things related to the bigger picture, not just individual events that has no act on the bigger strategy.
Thank you, Engineer Said. I will take Dr. Amjad, and then we'll close with Dr. Ahmed Matan. Where? I didn't see the hand. Which one? I didn't see the hand. Okay, please, go ahead.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Actually, I would like to get back to OAAA and the question of accreditation in relation to sustainability. I think we haven't discussed and we haven't heard anything about accreditation in relation to sustainability. My question is, do you see that accreditation of higher education institutions, institutional accreditation and program accreditation as a means to enforce sustainability that supports sustainable development, but also supports sustainable development goals? And thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
I'm trying to think, how nice should I be? All right, as a guest, yeah. Well, see, I'll tell you, I have a little bother with accreditations generally, and how higher education everywhere around the world works so hard to meet certain standards. And I'm sure those of you in quality have been engaged in papers and reports and evidences. But to translate that into the actual impact, I find is extremely difficult. And if you ask our key stakeholder, our students, not even those who will employ them, has anything changed from when we got accredited to when we renewed our accreditation and when we've got our 5 stars and you know, whatever, Equius and all of the other and many of them don't feel that. And there's a reason for that, because this is similar to businesses getting ISO certifications, right? So you say, these are my systems. They look whether they match the standardized systems, if everything is in there. Now, there's a lot of work that goes into that. But ultimately, what it does is burdens the institution rather than being engaged into simply improving your teaching methods and improving how happy your students and faculty are, so they would produce better outcomes. We're busy and engaged in keeping up with those standards. Now imagine if I tell you I want to add another layer, and let's call it sustainability. But we've heard from engineers that if you have it in your DNA, no one needs to come and parachute in a set of standards that you meet and not meet. I believe you should be the one holding yourself accountable. So when we talk about our values, let's stop talking about integrity and collegiality and all of that. That is part of what we do. Let's talk about how we want to make a change. Now, have you ever been in an exercise where you were asked to write a mission or a vision for a higher education institution? Right? What are the keywords? Excellence? A few other words, right? We don't go beyond that, right? You take it up, you take it down, you flip it around, ask AI to rewrite it for you. It will always be excellence, this, etc., whatever the case might be. So these are given things. Why are we writing them again? They're not inspiring us to be better. But once you set your goal, for example, in this organization, I'm very clear, I'm providing business studies, IT studies, and then aviation, and then whatever studies are here, and I choose what SDG I want to target. And in my next strategy, that's exactly what's going to be there, the purpose. We are here to create decent workplace, for example. We are here to create responsible consumption and production. That is the goal. It doesn't matter what others will tell me. Whether I'm using LEDs or not, that is given. Whether I have systems that use less energy, whether I have solar panels at the top of the building, those are given. I should not be hurt because I either cannot find the right collaborations or afford to do it, or somehow I have other priorities that are pressing on me at the moment. I'm not ignoring the importance of energy efficiency and whatnot. So let's not make higher education more complex. Let's think of the final outcome. Are those skills I'm building? Am I building people with a sustainable mindset? That's going to be in our curriculums, in our activities, and whatever we engage with. All right? Gone are the days where beach cleanups were sufficient to say we're being responsible. Today I'm asking how much time you spend on your phone, how many times you charge it, whether you carpool or don't carpool as you come here, whether you turn off the lights as you walk on. Those are little elements, put them all together. But more importantly, how many times have you shopped at Shein and all of these other places? How many times, have you changed your wardrobe? How many plastic bottles have you thrown out? And one little experiment I want everyone to do, right? All of these little bottles, I want you to collect them. You're going to collect them in what? Another plastic bag, right? All right. I want you to see by the end of the week how many of those plastic bags. After you've collected them, where are you going to take them? Now imagine that's for an individual. Now if you do it for your college here, or if you do it in Sultan Qaboos University, how many bags, how many tons are we going to produce? Imagine someone comes in and says, listen, you guys are not good enough because you're throwing away. We don't have other viable solutions today. We don't have glass bottles. Probably it's an HSE hazard anyhow. It breaks and someone steps on it, la qaddar Allah. Water fountains are no longer in. Back in the day when we were at school, water fountains were the thing. You can't wait to get ahead of everyone. Today you look at them very suspiciously, right? Right? We get our water bottles, we want to refill them. Where do you fill them? From the same suspicious looking water fountains, right? The story here is, let's not complicate higher education. Accreditation is challenging as it is, not because it's difficult. It's the amount of work you have to do just to clear the hurdles. The standards that you have, and then it takes 2 or 3 standards to stop you from actually getting accredited. Right? You're in probation, and then, there you go. What are we at in Oman? We're 9, right? Right? Okay? And then it takes you another year to recover from that shock and prove that you can be truly accredited. And it could be a technicality, an email that wasn't registered in the evidences, or, you haven't updated policy X. There's nothing new about it. It just needed to say the Board of Trustees updated it in 2024 instead of, waiting on it. So let's make it streamlined. Let's make sustainability achievable. Baby steps, low-hanging fruit. Let's be proud of what we've achieved. And the next thing we want to do is ask ourselves, how can we do better?
Thank you, Your Highness. MCBS is going through, reaccreditation now. So really, you sound very familiar. Okay, so I'm going to be ruthless now. I will take one question from Ahmed Matani, and then I will close the session. Ahmed Matani.
Thank you so much, Your Highness, Engineer Said. What a wonderful presentations. We learned so much from you today. Back to the idea of mindset. It's very difficult for a lot of institutions to get everybody on board, buying into believing in sustainability in their practices and in their teaching, in their research, and so on. Okay? So they asked me to stand up, okay? They wanted to see my huncher, okay? So anyway, what I was saying is that if you can share your experiences in terms of how we can get everybody on board, how we make everybody believe in this mission. Because sometimes the attitude is, because my boss said so, I need just to follow it without having that belief system in the approach or in the mission and how we can change the whole situation. So if you can share some insights, how to get everybody on board, and how also as individuals, how they can change this mindset to be part of the whole process.
You bring a big stick. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, obviously, it's again, changing mindset is it's a psychological, subconscious mind based on behaviors and so many things that's related to it. And imagining bringing those 200, 300 people in the same place and you're asking them to act exactly on your strategy. And then you have a KPIs, you have 12 months to make it happen. You have a very short time to make changes. And the stakeholders that just wait for you to make a mistake. You know, so there's a lot of factors that comes together. You have to, I mean, from my experience, what we have developed is 3 different layers. One is making it as a part of our DNA, the strategy. So anything that you act on has to be related to the top strategy at the end of the day. So your annual operation plan has to have elements of sustainability, how you protect the environment, how it's your act, and internally you will act upon that. Not only that, we also bring enthusiasts, people who's happy to work on more projects, extra curriculums or extra initiatives that are related to green and related to sustainability, so either social or economic or environment. And when we speak about social, it's a huge platform that you can create a lot of households and people who can show their culture and society and how we involve the society around us in the businesses that we have today. So we have those team who's actually green team, the people who sits together, and I actually share them every month, but they sit together and they come up with all those crazy ideas that we need to make those initiatives. Nothing crazy got discarded or not looked at. We have to look at it and see what are the next step that we have to do. It's really literally is the smallest steps that you create that creates a difference. People think of how can we go all the way to the top, but you need to do 1 step on that stairs before you reach the top. But that steps could be the first important step, because then you will know how does it feel when you go to the next step and third step. And very important, even His Royal Highness mentioned it in his previous answer. He said you need to talk about it. So award those people, talk about it in your annual gatherings. Reward the people who have done the best sustainable act, people who have made a difference in the strategy. And then reward them and make everybody appraise them and say, you know, well done, because everybody else want to be part of the winning team. Everybody want to be in the rewarding team. So I think when you do that, it takes time and it takes effort. It's 1% at a time. Always when I speak in front of people, I say, I just want 3% of you. And they say, what happened to the 97%? They had a choice. If they want to join the 3%, fine. But the 3% is my target. So when we act and we ask people to do, we ask for 3%. Just 3% change today, and we'll do the other 3% tomorrow. So I think that you inject that in their mentality, and then they're becoming initiator and also change agents. But it takes time. And then there's people who will always say, no, this is a bad idea. It's going to take us backward. This is not how we do business. But if you guys, I mean, if some of you are in personality different personality of people, you will know that people like that exist around us, and they're actually the majority. So just embrace them. Take their hands and say, listen, we will not hurt you. We'll just leave you on the side for now. We'll take you later on. But that's how it takes.
Thank you, Your Highness, and thank you, Engineer Saeed. There are more questions in the room, but unfortunately we are behind the schedule now, so I think maybe we can use a break to, pose these questions with His Highness and Engineer Saeed. Thank you very much for your intellectual contribution, and I hope, really everybody will enjoy this conference. So, everybody will stay around here now, and our guests want them on the floor, on the stage. Dr. Musa wants them there right now.
Thank you to everyone for the engaging Q&A session. To express our gratitude, we will now present tokens of appreciation to our patron and keynote speaker, His Highness As-Sayyid Dr. Adham bin Turki Al Saeed and Engineer Saeed Al-Shanfari. May I invite Dr. Musa Al-Kindi, Dean of MCBS, to present the gifts. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to His Highness As-Sayyid Dr. Adham bin Turki Al Saeed for his unwavering support and inspiration that have made this event possible. A special thank you to our esteemed keynote speaker, Engineer Saeed Al-Shamfari, for sharing his invaluable insights and wisdom that have truly enriched our gathering. We also wish to recognize the outstanding efforts of our presenters, organizers, and everyone who worked tirelessly behind the scenes to make today a success.
Okay, everybody, how is the energy? Down? So, this incredible start has set the stage for an event that is sure to be both inspiring and impactful. We can't wait to hear the brilliant ideas and thought-provoking conversations that will unfold in these sessions ahead. As we conclude this captivating opening ceremony, let's take a moment to recharge and connect. Just join us for a well-deserved coffee break in the MCBS cafeteria just across the hall. Let's keep the energy flowing and continue the discussions in a more casual setting. Thank you once again for being here, and we look forward to your active participation throughout the event. Thank you, everybody.